For nearly 30 years, Hugh Jackman stood in front of cameras and told the world the same story. His wife was the best thing that ever happened to him. He said it so often, so convincingly, that it became one of Hollywood's rare real love stories. Then, in June 2025, the divorce papers were signed. Within months, he was already planning a wedding with someone else. Now Deborra-Lee, the woman who was there before the fame, before Wolverine, before any of it, has finally spoken. And what she said after 2 years of silence forces you to go back and rewatch every loving tribute he ever gave her. You start wondering, when did the words stop matching the truth? To understand why she spoke up now, you need to understand what she didn't do for almost 2 years after the split. She gave one interview. She showed up at a film screening. Otherwise, she let the tabloids run wild without adding a single word. That kind of restraint from someone with every reason to vent? It's its own kind of statement. So when she finally did speak, people listened. What changed wasn't the separation. It wasn't even the divorce filing in May 2025. It was how fast everything moved afterward. By late 2025, reports surfaced that Hugh had proposed to Sutton Foster during a New Year's trip to Costa Rica. Sources claimed he was telling friends about the engagement before Sutton's own divorce from screenwriter Ted Griffin was even finalized. By early 2026, outlets were reporting a small private ceremony in New York. Ryan Reynolds as best man, guest list pulled from Hugh's Australian circle. Then came the detail that cut deepest, according to people close to Deborra-Lee. Hugh reportedly had zero interest in a prenuptial agreement with Sutton, despite sitting on a fortune estimated at $387 million. A fortune built, in large part, during the years Deborra-Lee stood beside him, raised their kids, moved across the world for his career, and created the stable home that let him become one of the biggest stars on the planet. After a marriage that long, that financially massive, the absence of a prenup doesn't need commentary. It speaks for itself. When asked how she felt watching Hugh and Sutton appear in public together, sources close to Deborra-Lee gave a 5-word answer: a real kick in the teeth. Not rage. Not a long rant. Just that phrase, delivered flat, like someone who's already survived the worst and is now just describing the aftermath. The aftermath, apparently, included a Manhattan penthouse. Deborra-Lee bought their shared home for $1.7 million, 2 days before filing for divorce. She locked it down in her name before a single legal document was submitted. That's not someone caught off guard. That's someone who saw the end coming long before the rest of us did. Her formal statement to the Daily Mail was the polar opposite of the careful, corporate language in their joint separation announcement 2 years earlier. She wrote about the traumatic journey of betrayal, and called it a profound wound that cuts deep. That word, betrayal, wasn't accidental. It was chosen by a woman who waited 2 years to speak and used her first real moment to say exactly what she meant. To feel the full weight of that word, you need to go back 30 years. Because how this marriage began explains why its ending landed so hard. Here's what gets lost in the divorce coverage. Deborra-Lee wasn't some unknown who built her identity around being Hugh Jackman's wife. She was already an established, award-winning performer before Hugh Jackman was a name anyone recognized. And that context changes everything. She trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. She worked on Falcon Crest in the US before returning to Australia, where she became one of the country's most respected actresses. In 1988, she won Best Actress at the Australian Film Critics Circle for Shame. By 1995, when she was cast as the lead in the TV series Corelli, Australian audiences and industry professionals already knew her name. Hugh Jackman, at that point, was 25 and fresh out of drama school. Corelli was his first professional acting job. He played a prisoner. She played the psychologist assigned to work with him. By his own account, he was instantly attracted. By hers, she was far more cautious. She was 13 years older. She'd been in the industry long enough to know exactly what people would say about a woman in her position falling for a younger man, and she was right because they said it for years. She tried to end it early. Told him the age gap was too significant, that goodwill couldn't fix the problems it would create. Hugh, with nothing but talent and what he called absolute certainty, refused to let her go. He told her the age difference didn't matter. He told her she was who he wanted. 4 months after they started dating, he proposed. They married on April 11, 1996, at St. John's Church in Toorak, Melbourne. She was 40. He was 27. For the next 27 years, she walked red carpets knowing every photographer was doing the comparison. She aged in public next to a man the world repeatedly voted sexiest man alive. She saw the comments. She read the headlines. She absorbed all of it while Hugh told every interviewer that she was the love of his life, his foundation, the person without whom none of his success would exist. On their 25th anniversary in 2021, he posted old wedding photos with a caption saying their love had only deepened, that being with her was as natural as breathing. A woman hears that for a quarter century, publicly, repeatedly, and she builds her life around it. She makes decisions based on it. She turns down opportunities, moves across the world, raises children, shows up every single day because she believes what he's telling her, privately and publicly, is the truth. Then came the Broadway revival of The Music Man. Rehearsals started in February 2022. Hugh's co-star was Sutton Foster, two-time Tony winner, one of Broadway's most decorated performers, with a reputation that stands entirely on its own. The show ran through January 2023, nearly a full year of nightly performances, press events, and the specific intimacy that grows between lead performers who share a stage every single night. According to multiple sources and reporting by US Weekly, the relationship between Hugh and Sutton became what people inside the production called an open secret. Cast members reportedly noticed extended physical closeness backstage. Sutton spoke in interviews about a pre-show ritual she and Hugh had developed, time they set aside each night to talk and connect before performing. She described it warmly, publicly. In retrospect, it reads differently than it probably seemed at the time. Sources close to Deborra-Lee said she sensed something had shifted. Her assessment, relayed through people close to her, an emotional affair had developed during the production, regardless of whether it had become physical while the marriage was still intact. And for someone who'd been with one person for nearly 3 decades, the line between emotional betrayal and physical betrayal matters less than outsiders tend to think. The turning away is the wound. Where someone turns toward is secondary. What makes the 2023 timeline so hard to stomach is the sequence. In April, Hugh posted a public anniversary tribute to Deborra-Lee. In May, they walked the Met Gala carpet together, the same way they had for years, presenting the image that had become one of Hollywood's most familiar. 4 months later, on September 15, 2023, they released a joint statement announcing their separation after almost 3 decades. The statement described their situation as a shift in their journey, and blamed it on a desire for individual growth. It was carefully constructed to say as little as possible while sounding thoughtful and mutual. If you've ever been on the receiving end of rehearsed language from someone who's already decided, you know exactly what that phrasing is hiding. Deborra-Lee said nothing publicly for nearly 2 years after that statement. She attended a film event in May 2024. When a journalist asked what the previous year had taught her, she answered quietly, she was strong and resilient. No elaboration. That's what you say when you're still in survival mode, not ready to name what actually happened. Meanwhile, in October 2024, Sutton Foster filed for divorce from Ted Griffin, her husband of a decade. In January 2025, Hugh and Sutton were photographed together in Los Angeles. Their relationship now visible, confirmed. Whatever had existed in the space between friendship and something more during The Music Man was finally public. The financial architecture of the Jackman divorce tells its own story, and it's worth examining because the decisions Deborra-Lee made in the days before filing reveal a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. On May 21, 2025, 2 days before filing, Deborra-Lee paid $1.7 million to acquire sole ownership of their Manhattan penthouse. She didn't wait to see how asset division would play out. She moved first, secured the property in her name, then filed. That sequence is deliberate. It reflects legal and financial preparation that doesn't happen overnight. The divorce was finalized in early June 2025. The total marital estate was estimated at $387 million, accumulated across nearly 3 decades. Hugh's X-Men earnings, Broadway work, endorsements, properties in Manhattan, the Hamptons, Australia, and England. The complete split hasn't been reported, but the scale alone reflects how much was built during those 27 years. Deborra-Lee's public statement, released around the filing, was the first time she'd spoken in direct terms. She wrote about the traumatic experience of betrayal, and called it a wound that cuts deeply. She expressed compassion for others who'd experienced similar situations. The statement was brief, but she used the word betrayal twice. Not an accident when someone has had 2 years to decide exactly what they want to say. Hugh and Sutton's response to what came next reportedly caused friction of its own. Multiple outlets reported that Deborra-Lee was in discussions with publishers about a memoir covering her marriage, her divorce, and navigating the aftermath. Sources indicated genuine interest from multiple publishers. She'd been keeping detailed personal notes throughout the separation, described by people familiar with the situation as a divorce diary. Hugh was reportedly aware the book was a possibility and hoped she'd decide against it. Sources connected to Hugh and Sutton described the project with anxiety, not indifference, about what it might contain. A woman who spent 27 years keeping her marriage private, who said almost nothing for 2 years after separating, who chose her words with evident care when she finally spoke, is not someone who'd write a memoir carelessly or without knowing precisely what she intends to say. Whether the book becomes a raw account of what the separation cost her or remains more measured, it represents something the joint statement in September 2023 completely erased, her version of what happened, and she's clearly decided that version deserves to exist. The public narrative around the Jackman marriage focused almost entirely on its longevity and Hugh's vocal, consistent devotion. What got far less attention was what Deborra-Lee was actually doing with her time, and what she gave up to make that marriage work. After their 1996 wedding, they tried to have children. The process involved IVF treatments and multiple miscarriages. Hugh spoke about this publicly. Deborra-Lee spoke about it considerably less, which says something about how each of them processed pain, and who was more comfortable using private grief as public content. She carried it the way women of her generation often did, not because she was unaffected, but because she'd decided some things were hers to hold privately. When biological options failed, they adopted. Oscar was born in 2000. Ava arrived in 2005. Deborra-Lee became a committed advocate for adoption reform in Australia, working to change legislation, reduce stigma, engaging directly with lawmakers. It was entirely her initiative, unconnected to Hugh's career. She built it independently, using her own platform and conviction, at a time when adoption reform in Australia was underfunded and politically ignored. She also made career decisions across those decades shaped by the reality of being the supporting partner in a marriage where one person's career operated on a global scale. Hugh's commitments required mobility. Deborra-Lee maintained her own work where she could, including her role in Force of Nature, The Dry 2, which she promoted in May 2024, but her professional life was constrained by being married to someone whose schedule was dictated by franchise filming, Broadway runs, and international press tours. There were roles she couldn't take because timing conflicted with family needs. Some projects required location stability she couldn't guarantee. These aren't dramatic sacrifices that make headlines. They're the quiet, accumulated costs of building a life around someone else's trajectory, and they rarely get counted in the public math of what a marriage actually contains. That cost only becomes visible in retrospect, once the marriage is over and you look back at what each person gave and received. Hugh got a stable home, a grounded partner, an advocate, a co-parent, someone who defended him publicly against every tabloid rumor, including years of speculation about his personal life that Deborra-Lee consistently, quietly shut down simply by being present and unwavering. What she got was 27 years of public declarations that apparently were easier for him to make than to sustain. And then a joint statement written to make both of them sound equally responsible for an outcome the subsequent timeline strongly suggests wasn't equally initiated. She was the one who tried to walk away at the beginning because she could see the risks. He was the one who talked her out of it. 27 years later, the person who left wasn't the one who'd been afraid to stay.